Hey, what's going on, HBS? It's been a while. I haven't had to lecture you, and you probably are just good not dealing with me face to face, but here I am. It is the beginning of week 7. Happy Tuesday. I'm filming this on Sunday, the 26th, so I can maybe get outside tomorrow afternoon and enjoy the day. But we'll start here. A little music for you. This is a super duper cool compilation that's put together by a bunch of people in quarantine, including the band Foo Fighters, and it is a Foo Fighters song. I've seen them in concert a couple times. Great show. I'm a huge fan of the lead singer, Dave Grohl, who is formerly the drummer of the legendary grunge band Nirvana. So he's got a pretty solid 30-plus year musical history. But I'll play this for a quick moment, and hopefully I can publish this on YouTube without them yelling at me too hard. On the street light shining, what I love right here, this is the drummer, Chad, I forget his name, but he's playing drums on his lava lamp at home while he quarantines. Solid skills. Anyhow, I'll post the link so that you guys can maybe watch it on your own time. Let's do this. This is your video lecture to go over 4.2.1 that you actually turned in, I believe, gosh, I'm going to lose track of days, but I believe you turned this in last Monday, April 20th. Yes. And so this is some detail. It was an introduction to muscles. So we researched the types of muscle tissue. By the way, gosh, when's the last time we read an introduction together? Do you miss it? I'll let you think about that for a minute. Let's go back down here. Types of muscle tissue. The 3 types of muscle tissue are skeletal, smooth, and cardiac. We spend most of our time thinking about and trying to better understand probably our skeletal muscle. Because anytime we do a workout, anytime we do something active, whether we're consciously thinking about the muscles that we're trying to work, or you just feel it the next day when you try to get out of bed and you hurt like crazy, your skeletal muscles are going through that recuperation afterwards. But smooth muscle and cardiac muscle are also absolutely essential to our survival. Skeletal muscle are those striated muscles that attach to our skeleton and allow for our movement. This is a group of voluntary muscles. Smooth muscle doesn't show these striations when we look at a group of muscles, and they're located in the walls of hollow or visceral organs of our body. Their contraction is involuntary, and it's actually a much slower rhythmic contraction than skeletal muscle. Skeletal muscle contractions, the easy one that I'll talk about probably through these couple of video lectures, is contraction of a bicep muscle. It's quick, it's intense, you can control that. Smooth muscle contraction is involuntary, meaning our nervous system is running the show without us having to control it with our the part of our the part of our nervous system that's in charge of just telling our muscles what to do. Cardiac muscle is also a striated muscle, and obviously that's located in the heart. Those cells are located in the heart, and that's an involuntary contraction, as we learned all about the contraction of our heart last year in PBS. I ask here in 2 to describe what it means if a muscle is striated and what it means if a muscle is said to be under voluntary control. The only thing I add here is that muscles are striated because there's certain proteins in basically all of our muscles, but they're organized very well in skeletal muscle and cardiac muscle into these repeating units. The repeating units, you don't have to know the term, but they're called sarcomeres. And when those proteins, actin and myosin, overlap, they're overlapping right now. But if you tell a muscle to contract, one grabs a hold of the other and it like pulls it past. So we actually get a shortening of the muscle by actin and myosin sliding past each other. And so these striations of these repeating units, that's what we see when we actually look at muscle under a microscope. The breakdown of things here was probably pretty quick and easy for us to research. We've talked about striation and whether a muscle group is voluntary or not. Where these muscles are located, we've spoken about, and their voluntary or involuntary functions over here, which I think are all, pretty clear for us. I'm not going to spend much time really digging into the histology. That's why I really got rid of that last column on the table. I did show pictures of them here, but I'm not going to ask you to identify them on an upcoming quiz. I really just wanted to show them to you. And again, to just keep in mind that striations are a good delineator between being able to identify skeletal muscle versus, say, smooth muscle. Those are the differences. Again, kind of redundant. I probably didn't need to ask this question. You guys were happy that you got to do it again, though, I'm sure. As we go down here, in terms of the structural makeup of a muscle and how it contributes to its ability to do a job, what I really would suggest you keep an eye on here is the different types of contractions. Striated muscle is actually very good for short, intense contractions. So when we think about our skeletal movement, those are short, intense contractions to cause bones and joints to bend to allow for our movement. Smooth muscle not being organized into those organized bundles leads to actually slower, more rhythmic involuntary contractions. So the easy connection for us for smooth muscle is our digestive system. From our esophagus conducting peristalsis, all that is smooth muscle contraction, just contract, slowly contracting and pushing food down through our esophagus into our stomach. There's smooth muscle contraction that goes on in the stomach that allows for more of that mechanical digestion. And in our small intestine, there's more smooth muscle to continually just rhythmically push that digested food through our digestive system. Cardiac muscle is organized into the bundles that we speak of in skeletal muscle, but not in exactly the same way. And we don't need to go into too much detail here, but I do bring up a term here called intercalated discs. That's what connects one bundle of muscle cells to the next. And those intercalated discs is just a kind of a little division between this group of muscles and the next group of muscles in our heart. And it actually allows for quick electrical connections. If you'll remember from the EKG work that we did last year in PBS in learning, here's some throwback for you guys, things like the SA node and the AV node, and your favorite and mine, the Purkinje fibers. We learned that was just a massive electrical connection from the top of our heart and the atria all the way down around the walls of the ventricles to get the ventricles to contract. And so it's just a solid connection to allow electricity to flow. And I've connected part 1 and part 2 of 4.2.1. So here's part 2 that you guys did. I just inserted the label diagram that I asked you guys to label. And the newest terms, I'll cover the different mysiums first. Epimysium, think epi to peri to endo. So from outside to in, endo being inside. Start with the epimysium. That mysium, that is connective tissue that wraps around the entire muscle. And so when we look at our picture here, we have bone and then tendon connecting that bone to the muscle. The connective tissue that is surrounding the entire muscle itself is called epimysium. As we work our way in, we can see an organization within that muscle where we have actually a lot of muscle fibers packed in together. And all those muscle fibers packed in together in this one grouping that I keep circling here, they're surrounded by a connective tissue called the in-between, which is the perimysium. So perimysium is that connective tissue surrounding this group of muscle fibers. This group of muscle fibers surrounded by a perimysium is called a fascicle. So we can see perimysium right here. This white area is the perimysium, but the whole thing of the perimysium and all the little muscle fibers inside, that's called a fascicle. And so if we go even zoom in more and we look at just one muscle fiber, there's connective tissue surrounding that muscle fiber, and that's called endomysium. So we've worked our way from the outside, epimysium, connective tissue, all the way to connective tissue that's surrounding just one teeny little muscle fiber, and we can even see muscle cells and nuclei in there. So that's really zoomed in. And again, they're all connective tissue. We learn here in number 9 the terms origin and insertion when we think about a muscle. So a muscle has two ends, simply put. It may have multiple origins, but the origin is the point of attachment of a muscle to the tendon, to the bone that actually doesn't move during contraction. The point of insertion is the other end of that muscle that connects to a tendon, to a bone, and that's the bone that actually moves. And so the easiest reference for us is going to be the bicep. It's probably the easiest to show without me tripping and falling and trying to demonstrate leg muscles or something. But the picture here is great. We see the bicep brachii right here. Bicep brachii connects up here to our clavicle, to the edge of our clavicle up here, and down below, it connects to our forearm. And particularly, we can see it connecting to the radius. And so when we contract that muscle, all we're doing is shortening. We're getting that overlap of actin and myosin. That muscle shortens. The origin, the connection to the clavicle, stays put. Our clavicle doesn't move when we contract our bicep, but the contraction of that bicep allows for the movement on the insertion side. So the insertion side of the muscle is where it's connecting to the radius or the forearm to allow for that movement upwards. Just think of like a bicep curl, okay? The muscle rules, again, we have two attachments, and those attachments must cross at least one joint to allow for movement. Again, a great visual is the bicep crossing that joint of the elbow. And muscles pull or they contract and they get shorter, which allows for the movement of that bone. The attachment of muscle that is stationary is at the origin. The attachment of muscle to bone that moves is the insertion, which we spoke about before. Muscles that decrease angles are called flexors, and muscles that increase angles are called extensors. So following our bicep curl example, there are opposing pairs of muscles throughout our body. One pair of the two will cause a flexion, and its antagonistic buddy or pair is going to cause extension. So when we do a bicep curl, biceps brachii is contracting and causing the forearm to move upwards. So that's biceps brachii acting as a flexor. The antagonistic pair to biceps brachii is triceps brachii, that muscle that's on the back side of our humerus. And that muscle functions as an extensor. So when it contracts, it actually causes an increase of the angle or brings the muscle back to normal. So it's not just a relaxing of the biceps that causes the arm to go back, as you may think. It's actually the contraction of the extensor, which is triceps. When it contracts, it causes that arm to extend or go back to where it was before. So that's number 5. Muscles work in opposing pairs, often referred to as antagonistic pairs. Number 6, I probably won't cover in much detail, but muscle striations point to the attachment and show the pull of direction. Again, since we're not spending much time on the histology of things that I showed in the slides up above, I'm not going to spend too much time with number 6. And this is our understanding of origin and insertion. The side of the muscle that's connected to the moving bone is the insertion. So this gives us just another visual here of biceps brachii connecting up here. It's actually the top of our scapula. Sorry if I misspoke earlier. I think I said clavicle, but it's connecting to the top of our scapula of our shoulder blade, which you picture being back here. The top of it is up here where biceps brachii can connect to. And number 12 was all about your mom saying she came back from the doctor. Doctor said, you pulled your tibialis anterior, which is fancy Latin for you once upon a time. But now you can be like, oh, without even looking that up, gosh, I can probably say tibialis. That muscle has got to be close to the bone tibia. So that's where tibialis comes from, is it's connected to our tibia, that shin bone. Anterior, take our directional terms that we learned from the fall. Anterior just meant towards the front of our body, as the opposite of posterior, which is towards the back of our body. And so this muscle is probably located on the front, just thinking from my perspective, looking down at my legs, the front of my lower leg, my shin. If you've ever had shin splints, for all you tracksters that maybe aren't out doing the workouts that you would have been doing, maybe one silver lining to not having track season is that you didn't have to deal with shin splints. I coached enough track in my days to have talked to a lot of kids that have dealt with shin splints. The most common is actually connected to the muscle tibialis posterior, which is going to be a muscle connected to our tibia but runs on the backside of our shin bone. But I also have talked to plenty of kids that have had shin splints on the front of our leg, which is that muscle tibialis anterior. Okay. You guys already know number 13. When you are cold, your muscles begin to contract involuntarily. You don't have to voluntarily tell yourself to shiver, even though you can. Your body will do it without you even telling those muscles to do that. That occurs because we're trying to just maintain homeostasis. To produce heat, the more our muscles are contracting, the more cell respiration is being done to create heat as a byproduct. And it creates heat as a byproduct. That's going to work to raise our internal body temperature and keep us at that homeostatic level of 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit or 37.5 degrees Celsius. As I say here, y'all already know this. Folks, I think that's it. I'm going to do a separate lecture to walk you guys through 4.2.2 that you guys have worked on. And so that way we'll be up to speed on content. Just keep in your mind, you do have coming in the relatively near future, probably the end of next week, quiz over 4.2 at least. But I will keep you guys notified so it's not a shock to your system. I think that's everything, guys. I'll talk to you soon with the next lecture. Hope you guys had a great weekend, and I will catch you later.